The last stop of President Lee Jae-myung's 5-day UN trip is the New York Stock Exchange. He's about to host an investment summit to appeal to Wall Street investors and encourage investment here in South Korea. While we wait for him to appear, let us turn to experts for what to look forward to from the president's address. Joining us here in the studio is Professor Sung-Soo Eric Kim. Welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for joining us. And also joining us virtually is Professor Hwa-Kyun Kim. Thank you so much for connecting with us, Professor Kim.
Always a pleasure.
So, Professor Kim, let's start with the nature of President Lee Jae-myung's attendance at the New York Stock Exchange. Why do you think he's making the time to attend the Korea Economic Briefing Investment Summit? I mean, why does he feel the need to do so before he leaves New York?
Well, I think President Lee is trying to directly promote the Korea's economic policies and especially reforms to major global investors and address challenges facing the country's financial markets and some other political issues, obviously. And I think he sees this as an important platform to attract foreign investment, enhance the international credibility of Korean market, and also kind of counteract the chronic Korea discount, so-called. So if we look at the details, I think, for instance, the trade tension, I think, is given now, and also the substantial investment pressure from the U.S. to Korean side. So I think the President Lee's participation can be seen as also an effort to assure international investors in markets that South Korea is pursuing a stable and rational economic path. And this type of things, I think, is an important the way to do sales. I think, especially given the situation, and also from the beginning, President Lee was pushing a lot about the promoting the stock market, and also tries to overcome the Korea discount. So in that regard, the injection of the foreign investment money into the stock market, I think, is a good thing. So overall, I think that's probably the major intentions, I think.
Right. The president himself is rolling his sleeves to really promote the Korean stock market. It's also known that it's the first time for a South Korean president to do a national IR, investor relations, Professor Eric, in the hub of Manhattan. What significance do you think his visit carries?
So I think that's really interesting and pragmatic that a president of a leading economic partner is actually doing an IR to the heart of the financial capital in the United States. So I think this is along with his pragmatic approach for our diplomatic policy. And also it aligns with the conversation that he had with the president of BlackRock, Larry Pink, a couple of days ago. So he wants to directly speak to the investment group that Korea is a very attractive market to invest in. And it also declares that Korea is a global partner. I think probably with the confidence of K-pop demon hunters and for the global recognition about the Korean economy, this is a good time to also sell the great investment opportunities in Korea. Because we also need that investment packages. Yes, because our economy is not in a good situation. So I think it's mutual, sales to attract investment and also to promote our country.
Right, like you said, the timing cannot be any better. Like, this is where President Lee introduces his administration's economic policies and really appeal to investors to, hey, invest in South Korea, right?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that we want to probably, achieve out of this, summit. First, the current administrative goal is very focused on stock market. As Professor Kim said, we had a so-called Korea discount problem that has been going for a long time. Even during the pandemic, when all the countries were showing on stock rallies, our stock market was not really performing.
Right.
We have a lot of issues like corporate governance issues and other markets, stability issue and political, stability issue. But by the president speaking directly to the foreign investor group, that now our country is stable it gives greater confidence to foreign investors to invest in the Korean stock market, to pursue a greater boost in our stock market.
Indeed. Now let's talk about President Lee Jae-myung's own strategies to really attract those foreign investors. Professor Kim, what sort of Korea's investment appeal do you think the president will emphasize in his investor pitches that we are waiting for?
Well, I think, obviously there are kind of the traditional strengths actually in case of the Korean industry. So all the manufacturing side, especially the semiconductors and also the high-tech manufacturing sectors. Of course, the shipbuilding and many other things as well. But I think the President Lee's, I think the focus seems to be also a lot on artificial intelligence from through the UN, the meetings, etc. I think it seems to have the consistent theme of the AI and also the both in terms of software and hardware. So I think that's going to be something that the President Lee is trying to really push, that for the next 5 to 10 years, South Korea is going to lead the global leadership in AI together with the other big countries such as US and China. And I think that's not just an empty promise, because the South Korea already has proven, like in case of the internet era and also the following all this kind of the information economy, and it was one of the leaders. So the South Korea is going to continue to do that, and we have a capability and also all the investment and the backup from the government. Therefore, just the other countries' investors can definitely just invest in Korean market. I think that's kind of the main pitch. And then, of course, the green opportunities and things like that are back in some sense. So this government is trying to also push hard together with the AI, the innovation. So the green technologies and the related stuff is going to be ensuing. Therefore, the green-focused investors can also safely invest in the South Korea.
Then, Professor Kim, that makes me wonder, do you think those will be actually appealing to global investors to, put their money in South Korea?
I mean, it's always we have to wait and see. But many of the promising companies do AIR or the road shows, and with this type of hope. And it turns out that many studies show that this type of IR are effective, actually, because at the end of the day, investors lack the information. And especially now, the president is actively showing and also promising these kind of things. And also, President Lee is a good speaker. So therefore, I think it's going to be very appealing to investors, especially if the potential investors are talking with him and the other government officials.
So I do have to mention, Professor Eric, the Lee administration has made clear of its pursuit of substantive economic outcomes through direct engagement with investors abroad. How do you view President Lee Jae-myung's pragmatic diplomacy, like you mentioned earlier, approach embodied in this mission particularly?
So first, because we had a political situation over the Yoon administration's impeachment, and it took some time to settle down, that we're still that problem is still a ongoing concern in the Korean market. But as a foreign investor, if you look at the Korean market, you would need stability in long-term planning. So it's really important that the president directly speaks to the investor group that Korea will be stable and to give a word that if you invest in the Korean market, the situations are going to be handled. So I think those messages are really important as a symbolic message to the foreign investment group. And we also have to understand why President Lee's administration is focusing on the stock market, because our national wealth was too much, invested in the real estate market. So we want to, we want to shift that money to the stock market, so so our companies can utilize that capital to grow the economy. So that's the core strategy of the Lee's administration. So in that sense, I think we should give also assurance to foreign investors that we would give some kind of a foreign investor-friendly market environment.
Right.
For example, deregulation, or we also need to provide immigration packages for foreign workers to come work to Korea. For example, if they come to Korea to work, they're going to bring their family, and we need more foreign schools and a lot of working friendly environment.
Right, the inflow.
Yes, for the high talents of foreign investments to come in, because they of course invest capital, but they will also accompany their top talents to Korea. So it should be a packaged, detailed communication to the foreign investor groups as a long-term plan.
I'd like to point out two points from your statements. One, that is why President Lee Jae-myung, declared the normalcy of South Korea's democracy at the UN address on Tuesday, and also to the shift of money flow, from the real estate to stock market here in South Korea, right?
Yes, yeah. So I think that also aligns with the UN speech of normalization.
Indeed.
Yes.
Right. Well, Professor Kim, we've had some bullish days for South Korean shares in the recent days, breaking past their all-time highs. Now, do you think President Lee's visit today, this time, will finally help ease the so-called Korea discount? What's your take on it?
I think so. As we know, like Korea discounts refers to this South Korean stock market trading at much lower, price compared to earnings, or that asset values, even compared to similar countries, not just, the US or other big countries. So even if the Korean industries consist of a lot of advanced sectors, which can be viewed as growth stocks in some sense. The growth stocks tend to have very high price earnings ratio, et cetera. But despite that, I think we have such low price earnings ratio, and that's actually what we just typically call Korea discount. And that's kind of puzzling effects. And I think at least after the Korean, the new government came and then pushed a lot for the resolution of this, the Korea discount, I think this problem has disappeared by a large extent. But I think it's a long way to go, because it's been really stagnant in terms of the levels. So I think at least twice actually should just to go up to kind of match this price earnings ratio compared to other similar countries. So in that regard, I think President Lee's push, I think, is very timely and important. And also, when you're asking about the possibility that so far I think is going really well. So if it can be followed by meeting the expectation, satisfying the expectation in terms of the earnings, and also the improvement of the investor sentiment, and also the firm's governance structure actually improvement, then I think definitely it can have just much better outcome than I think we had for the last decade or so.
Well, in the business community, there is attention on whether President Lee Jae-myung's visit will accelerate Korea's inclusion in the MSCI, Morgan Stanley Capital International Developed Markets Index. Professor Eric, how crucial is the inclusion to begin with?
So MSCI inclusion has been discussed in the investment group for some time, and was pointed of one of the reasons why the current stock market is very weak.
Indeed.
Of course, we have our market problems, as Professor Kim mentioned, corporate governance issues, and also regulation, and also taxes. A lot of things affect the low price to earning ratio. But the MSCI index, if I give an analogy, as a major league. Right now, Korean stock market is not in the MSCI major league, so we are a minor league. So as a foreign investor, you would perceive a risk.
Professor Eric, it looks like President Lee Jae-myung is about to deliver his address, and we'll come back right afterwards.
이렇게 많은 분들이 함께 해주셔서 고맙습니다. 그리고 저 개인적으로도 뉴욕 증권거래소는 꼭 한번 와보고 싶었는데 이렇게 또 환영해 주셔서 진심으로 감사드립니다. 미국은 자본주의 시장 경제를 이끌어가는
The United States is a leader in leading the capital market, and it is at the core. And the Republic of Korea, of course,
협력으로
with the support and cooperation with the United States, we had survived the war. And with that tremendous support, we became one and only country that had achieved democracy and economic prosperity thanks to that immense support. At the moment, the international order is forming anew, and it is also an era of confusion that we need to find a new path, but it is also an opportunity for the Republic of Korea. So since I am short on time, the market of Republic of Korea and the economic situation, I'd like to give you some thoughts of mine as the president of the country. The United States market is seeing the all-time high, and likewise, the Republic of Korea is also regaining its all-time highs these days. During my campaign, I stated that my party, Democratic Party, and President Lee Jae-myung being the president or elected as president, that itself, just by that fact, would bring the Kospi over the 3,000 mark, and that is actually happening. And I know that some of you might know, but the stock market in Korea is indeed undervalued. For instance, the PBR is under 1, and PER as well is extremely low. And the countries, underdeveloped countries, PBR and PERs, it even is lower than their indices. Why is this? The Korean companies, their performance and their capacities are huge, but why is this stock market so low? There would be many reasons, and one of that would be the geopolitical issue and risk of the Republic of Korea, because we are under armistice, and there's also a concern, I believe, that is affecting this Kospi performance of worry of war. And another part is that it is somewhat shameful, but the governance structure of Korean companies some of them seem a bit vague. So that would make people hesitate to invest in Korean companies. And the third point would be the inequality of the Korean market itself. Of course, this will be fixed. And stock manipulation, there weren't stringent regulations against such activities. And another point that is chipping in would be the political instability. And before my administration, the direction forward was not that clear. And for the foreign investors, there were some barriers for foreign investors until now. But all of this will change. The people of the Republic of Korea trust on this as well. Without any corrections, just by the fact of my administration coming into office, there is a hope that the Kospi will climb up, and it is overwhelmingly going up. but this is still at the point where PBR has just reached its 1 mark. I believe there will be more improvements in the future, and this new government of mine is taking steps, and these steps will proceed. And one thing that we did first was that we are going to be very strict on regulation, that anything that is illegal will never be tolerated. What I said in Korea is that if you are manipulating the stock market, you will be stripped of everything, really everything, of your household, of everything that you have. So any murky transactions or any illegal interests that you would like to gain or any try to gain, that will be unacceptable and it will be impossible. It will never be tolerated. And another point is that we have been amending the Commerce Act, and through this we are trying to make a change in the decision-making process of the Korean companies. The board of directors' responsibility also extends to the shareholders' rights, so that the shareholders' rights are protected. And this will prevent any decision-making process or any business that will benefit only a handful of people, and they will face punishment. And another point that we are making the changes in is that the shareholders will have their fair share and their fair say in their when they're exercising their rights. And this will come into effect. And for instance, through taxation reform, we would like to give out more dividends, and also if any abuse of their stock buy-in, and this will be amended through the third wave of Commerce Act amendment. And I believe this point will be the most important, is that the geopolitical risk of Korea, the inter-Korean conflict and hostility, and that leading to the undervalued stock price of Korea, all this will be improved. The Republic of Korea has, excluding the U.S. Army in Korea, our own in-house defense power is number 5 in the world. The national defense expense is 1.5 or 1.4 or 1.5 fold of North Korea's GDP per annum. And as you know, our defense industry is very strong. And the ability of production, meeting the target date, the technology, the price, the performance. Of course, some exceptions will be made for the cutting-edge science and technology domain, but other than those parts, we are a defense powerhouse. And going into the future, of course, there was requests from President Trump, but even not considering that, we are going to make a big advancement and much bigger expansion in national defense. So there's no point of worrying about the national defense capabilities, but why the worries linger about the geopolitical risk is all because of political issues. Again, I'm a bit ashamed to say, but we, for several different reasons, were provoking North Korea. And at the moment, what North Korea is doing is that they are fencing like 3 times fence at the armistice line, and this is like a defense line, very strict defense line, and this is not to this is to prevent people coming to their parts, meaning that they are afraid of this military power that they might be inferior of. So the military power, the defense power, is much stronger on our side, but it is what is more important is to be living peacefully. So I also said this to President Trump, that North Korea, in order to maintain their regime, this asymmetrical military power, which would be the nuclear weapons, they are really lingering on to this nuclear power for the last several decades. And that is why they're continuously developing the ICBM, that they can attack the U.S. territory. And I think they are at the brink of the success of this ICBM actually achieving that. And the North Korea and Russian cooperation is forging more tightly, and for us that would be a threat. And that is why I suggested to President Trump, not as a political rhetoric, but sincerely I said that it seems like North Korea has their ample amount of nuclear weapon, and they're still producing the nuclear materials every year, and the ICBM that can target the U.S. territory is almost at the finish line. And if we just let it lie or just let that be, then they will advance year by year on making nuclear materials and advancing their ICBMs. What is worrying is that it is highly possible that they will export it to other countries. So that is why stopping them here at this point of halting, for them to halt the development of nuclear materials, development of ICBMs, and therefore exporting their nuclear weaponry, I suggested that we would have to let them stop doing this. And in the long run, that will be a pursuit of denuclearization. But at the moment, it is The most important thing is that we have to stop them right now first. And the person who can negotiate this and who has the willingness to do this, and the person who North Korea can trust as a negotiating partner, that person would be the one and only President Trump. There's no one else than President Trump. And that is why I believe that with that power, you can be, if that could result in peace on the Korean Peninsula, then that you can be the true peacemaker. That is where I was coming from. The Republic of Korea's government having a positive standpoint and pursue in this direction based on our overwhelming defense capacity, we would be able to achieve what we would like to. So Taiwan is also being threatened by China, but still they're not so undervalued. So why I think that our stock market is so undervalued is because of this geopolitical issue that is influencing the Kospi price. And lastly, the fourth point is that the industrial policy of the Republic of Korea, the commercial policy, the government policy has a great influence on economy. And the Republic of Korea, the industry structure is expanded to the high-tech, and it is going to be restructuring to high-tech, to aerospace and AI and these new technologies, and the government will put immense support in this regard. And we will have to make the direction of our economy forward predictable. And that is what we are doing, and we're putting our endeavors into this so that we could make our market foreseeable. And we're doing two things in large. One is that we want to do away with the inconveniences of the foreign investors that they face in Korea. One is that do we have Morgan Stanley people? Because I really wanted to meet them. I look forward to your support. The inclusion in the MSCI, why this was not possible until today was that we were not fully prepared. And I understood that this was because of the foreign exchange related issue, and this will be resolved as fast as we could, so that any inconveniences that these foreign investors face will be disappearing. And this foreign exchange stock transaction inconveniences will be resolved. And I met someone who was a real estate investor, and I told him that I recommend you to change your investment direction to stock market. At the moment, the Republic of Korea, the investment itself is very much centered on real estate. About 80% of it is for real estate. So my country, as a government policy to divert the Korean investors, their investment destination to financial market is the initiative that we are trying to pursue. That is why we have the persons in charge today at this meeting, that I brought them here. The assets, the capital, the assets itself of the Republic of Korea was too much centered on real estate, and therefore the instability of the economy. So we're trying to convert with a policy such investment direction to this other part. So I've been talking quite some time. I would like to listen to your opinions. So right now we are having a very all-out reform in Korea, and of course I cannot be 100% sure, but our market, our stock market in the Republic of Korea will be enhanced, and I'm a bit worried that you might swamp in before the people of Korea can make their investments first. So I'd like to hear your opinions today. Thank you.
There, we just watched President Lee Jae-myung's address at the Korea Investment Summit taking place in New York. Let us now dissect more of his speech. I am joined by Professor Sung-Soo Eric and Professor Kim. President Lee started off his speech with reasons behind South Korea's such poor performance, inequality of Korean stock itself, geopolitical risks, and also political instability. What stood out to you the most?
So I think that President Lee gave at least 5 reasons why the current stock market was not performing well. First, he addressed that the geopolitical risk with North Korea is one of the reasons why we have a so-called a Korea discount. And he also pointed out the opaque, corporate governance structure that we have, and also, market transparency in terms of stock price manipulation or accounting frauds, and also market instability. So this instability in the economic situation itself, and also foreign investor environments are not friendly. And he also addressed a lot of his thoughts on how to deal with each of these issues. So I think it really addressed which kind of position President Lee is having with his administration and what he wants to deliver to the world.
Indeed. Professor Kim, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And also, what is your take on this speech? What do you think? What else to add on top of Professor Eric?
Yeah, so I think the Professor Eric actually mentioned really well about all this, the things that the President Lee was talking about. So related to what we were talking about, like this low price book to market ratio or the price to earnings ratio, I think he was actually starting with that. So the take was really nice in that, we call this type of like low PBR or low PE ratio stock as value stocks. Value stocks are typically just, categorized further into 2 types. One is depressed stocks. This is not only undervalued, but I think their financial and also the future prospects are bad. Therefore, these are like undervalued. That's one category. And the other is, it's kind of like the diamond in the rough. It's a good stock, but people do not know well, and also it's relatively less actually advertised. That's why this stock is low. So you can kind of clearly see that the price projection for these 2 types of the value stocks will be very different. I think the President Lee's point, I think, is somewhat related to, this 2 types of the value stocks. Definitely the Korean stock market is not the first one, but the second one. So it's more like a diamond in the rough type the argument. And then I think And the government is really trying to resolve these kind of the exogenous reasons, such as geopolitical reasons, and also like some regulation related, and also I think practice related, the sort of bad practices. So I think if these are lifted off, then I think that's definitely going to be just helping the stock market to boost up. And I think he started by like just because the this new government entered, I think, the stock market moved up because stock price is more like a sufficient statistic for the financial health of the economy. So if somehow the discount rate is going to go down and also, the future prospect of the expected cash flow goes up, then price should go up, even if actual performance is not delivered. And that's actually what he was really trying to say. And I think another sort of like, somewhat hidden the take, I mean, it's not so hidden, is I think if more investors, inflow comes to the Korean market, obviously dollars and euros that will basically entering this Korean market, then I think that's definitely going to stabilize the exchange rate. The exchange rate actually is quite high. And I think, my view is the fundamentals should be more like around like 1,001 or the 1,101 per dollar, but obviously we have like 1,401 per dollar or something. So that's definitely an issue. And also with this, the tariff pressure and the investment to the U.S., that can actually destabilize this, the exchange rate market further. So I think by kind of like, really encouraging the investment to the Korea, if this foreign exchanges actually the reserves actually will come into the Korean market, that's going to be a very good positive sign for exchange rate market as well. So I think that's like yeah.
Well, Professor Eric, I do have to mention how President Lee also did mention the South Korea's inclusion of MSCI. Thank you for the correction. What did he have to point out for the reason not being included yet?
So he mentioned about the our instability in foreign exchange, markets, and also the exchange hours are not really firmly in the global standards. So he promised that he's going to deregulate that for an investment-friendly environment. But I think that's what President Lee tried to address today, is try to explain the current situation. If you look outside from the world, from Korea, it's going to be really hard to understand what's going on in Korea.
Right.
So I think his message today paired one-to-one on the domestic situation. For example, his explanation that he would guarantee market transparency is tied to the domestic issue of former First Lady Kim Geon-hye's trial on the stock price manipulation, and his declaration that he's going to protect minority shares, controlling majority shareholders, and making sure that minority shares also have the equal rights in the market is tied to the commercial law reform that's under the confirmation of the National Congress, and also his explanation of the strong position of Korean military to control the geopolitical risk, and also his explanation of why North Korea is developing nuclear weapons and what is their strategy, was trying to lead to his declaration of the End Initiative, which is exchange with North Korea and normalization of the relationship and also denuclearization. So he also mentioned that this cannot be done without the help of President Trump. So he also mentioned that President Trump should be the peacemaker, and he is going to be the pacemaker. He revealed, once again, recapped the conversation that he had with President Trump during his last summit. So I think this IR, in a nutshell, is trying to explain to the U.S. investors in the world of what's going on in Korea, because it's going to be really hard to understand, and translate it into a investors' language of why Korea is now an attractive market, because we are, solving these problems that we have internally.
Right, that is why he couldn't have stressed enough how South Korea has become this huge defense powerhouse to, secure stability on the Korean peninsula. Hey, it is safe to invest here in South Korea, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, Professor Kim, President Lee Jae-myung also mentioned the very need to shift the shift of assets from being on the real estate and to stock markets. He really had to mention how, housing markets here in South Korea are overheated and that the assets are, they do need to be shifted, right?
Right. So we cannot completely blame the investors about this really highly skewed asset allocation to real estate, because once you earn the money, investors try to find the safe haven and also growing areas, and then actually obviously the real estate the market has been really stable and it has been going up. So I think people try to use this as their a main investment vehicle. But then, so that's actually also the artifact that I think Korean wealth actually has been increasing. But at the same time, obviously, this is also related to one of the reasons that he was talking about why, the stock market's undervalued, and then we have these kind of issues and trying to resolve these things. Given that these are now going to be fixed or underway of the reform, now you will actually have more or less equal grounds in terms of the investment. So if you actually have extra income and also extra allocations to do in terms of investment, why not pushing to the stock market? And like I said, it's a value stock, and also it has very high potential for growth. That's kind of unique in terms of positions. Therefore, buy a cheaper price, definitely it's going to pay off. Therefore, why not doing this for more profitable opportunities? Because a lot of investment tend to go momentum type of trading, in that if some assets are doing well, then why don't you keep just trading this or just investing it? But at the same time, the value trading is another very popular form, as always just talked about, Warren Buffett and many other legendary investors. So I guess the President Lee's take, I think, is smart in that, yes, the real estate market is skewed and it's been doing well, but now that we fix all the issues, why not purchasing this good and cheap stocks so that you can make money? I think that's very appealing to me.
Well, Professor Eric, I'd like to end with you with the ultimate question. Do you think President Lee's visit today will actually encourage investment from foreign investors?
I think it explains a lot about what's going on in Korea, because we have to recall what happened right before the summit. I mean, President Trump posted on his social media, if we quote it, what's happening in Korea.
Before their summit.
Yes, so it's really hard to understand what's really going on in Korea. So I think President Lee took the opportunity to explain to the investment group. But we also have to connect this to our negotiation strategy with tariff. We requested investment. So at the same time, U.S. will also, I think a good strategy will be also promising that we will buy U.S. bonds, because that is one of the biggest concerns in the tariff negotiation.
Indeed. Well, Professor Kim, thank you so much for Eric Kim. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay.
And also, Professor Kim over in Texas, thank you so much for connecting with us.
Always a pleasure.
All right. That wraps up our special coverage of President Lee Jae-myung's address at the Korea Investment Summit in New York. This has been Kim Da-mi. Thanks for watching and good night.